This is Our Side of Addiction, the podcast. I'm Amanda Bork. Let's go. Hello to all my people in speaker land. Hopefully you're well. Hopefully your day is going well, or your night. Doing something small for yourself. I want to tell you about a little act of self-care I did for myself recently. I am very much a sleepy girl. Like, if you know me in real life, you know that I'm a sleepy girl. You can find me somewhere sleeping. I used to be very exciting in my 20s, but I'm in sleepy land now. And I can sleep anywhere. It's just my life experiences have programmed me or trained me to be able to sleep anywhere. As soon as I sit down in a plane, I will pass out. There was one time I got in the plane and my body just naturally goes to sleep when I sit in a plane. I have it programmed. It's miserable flying, and I've programmed my body to associate that horrible seat with going to sleep. And one time I fell asleep. We got stuck on the tarmac, and it was probably like 45 minutes. And when I woke up, we were on the tarmac, and I was like, oh my God, that's so great. I woke up from ground to ground. That is amazing. How did I sleep the whole flight? I didn't have to get woken up, nothing. I was so stoked. And I talked to the lady next to me, and I was like, that was such a quick flight. I can't believe I slept the whole way. And she said, we haven't even gotten off the ground. We're still in the departure city. I remember that. Anyways, I'm sleepy. I will fall asleep in a room full of people talking and hooting, hollering. Very recently, I don't know what's going on with my sleep. See, that's the thing. Sometimes it's a little disordered. Sometimes I can't sleep. Sometimes all I want to do is sleep. Recently, I haven't been sleeping that great. And thoughts in my head and tossing and turning. I'll lay there for 2 hours and then get frustrated. So naturally, I'm tired during the day and I want a nap because that's my favorite pastime. I love to take a nap, but I've been trying to fight it because that perpetuates worse sleep in the night. If I take a nap in the day, I know I'm sleeping late in the night. I'm trying to break it, but I've been holding off on that nap for a while and things aren't leveling out. And very recently I was like, you know what? I'm going to take a little hour and a half, 2 hours tops, a little nap. And I'm going to set my alarm. And as soon as that alarm goes off, I'm up. Nap is done. I have to. I'm exhausted. I set that alarm for 2 hours. And it woke me up from my sleep after 2 hours, and I shut that alarm off and I went back to sleep for another 2 hours. Yeah. 4-hour nap. Because I know y'all know 2 plus 2. 4-hour nap. I don't even know if we can call that a nap because lately I've been getting 6-hour sleeps in the night. It was basically, I slept for a night. How is y'all sleeping? Are you sleepy people? Are you those machines who only need 5 hours of sleep and you're good to go? Are you a late nighter? Are you an early birder? Tell me where you're at with your sleep, because I think that's such a fascinating conversation, how some people naturally love the night and some people love the day. I don't know. It's an interesting conversation, and I want to know where you're at. All right, let's get into our topic because sure as heck ain't my sleeping schedule, my disordered sleeping. We are going to be talking about a very interesting term. I'm going to try my best to start implementing some of the verbiage that addicts and people in recovery use, these terms, so that you can understand and feel like you're a part of the lingo a little bit when our addicts are using all these new words. It can feel even more like you're not connected, a little more like you're an outsider, not insider, outsider. And the term for today, what we're going to be discussing, is called dry drunk. A dry drunk. Oh gosh. Already fumbling. Dry drunk. That's what we're talking about. Of course, naturally, you might associate this word only with alcoholics. Dry drunk. I mean, come on. But initially, it was coined as that. Terminology was directed at alcoholics, but it's an old term, and our scope of addiction is a lot broader now. And when people are using this word, it's associated with anyone with an addiction. And this is when someone stops using, but they're not in recovery. There's a difference there. We sometimes can associate stopping usage with a stop of addiction. It's over because they're not using. The truth about addiction is that it's all occurring mentally before it occurs physically. Just like I tell you, addiction doesn't stop once someone enters a treatment program. Addiction also doesn't stop just because someone ceases to use. It's confusing because for us, we associate using with the addiction and that's it, but that's just not the case. Let's start the conversation with a definition. What is dry drunk? It is a person who has stopped using alcohol or drugs, but has not made any significant emotional, psychological, behavioral, or spiritual changes. Nothing else is different, only the usage has stopped. If someone is in recovery, there are significant changes. If someone is taking their recovery seriously, there are those changes. I, as you know, facilitate meetings at a rehab, and there is a large number of people who come through those rooms and make no changes. They just sit there in those seats and wait for time to pass, thinking that once the time passes, my problem will be gone magically. Either they're not ready, they don't want to invest the time, they are in kind of a delusional thinking, they're trying to weasel their way through, they're trying to figure out how they can do it halfway or partial way and still succeed. There's a lot going on. Just because someone is in rehab doesn't mean anything. Just because someone has stopped using also doesn't mean anything, unfortunately. For a person to be in recovery and for that to be successful, they have to address the underlying issues. Why are they actually there? What led them there? I always think about it as kind of yard work or gardening. We can chop off that top layer. Go through with a weed whacker, go through with a lawnmower, whatever, and we can make that yard look really nice. And you'll come over and give me a compliment on how nice the yard looks. But I live in Florida, and it won't even be a damn week that'll go by. Ah, my God. I don't know how Floridians keep up, because maybe it's just my yard. It won't even be a week, y'all. And I'll go back there and there's a vine somewhere climbing something, you know? You can compliment me because it looks good on the surface, but all those roots are still underneath the ground. They're just waiting to resurface. And like my Florida yard, it's not going to take very long for them to resurface. And that's how we can think about addiction recovery versus dry drunk. Is dry drunk is just almost cutting off that top layer, but leaving everything else under there. And you might compliment them. Congratulations, I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy we've gotten past this. Blah, blah. Eventually, those roots that are deep in that soil will resurface. Versus recovery is when we get down on our hands and knees in that dirt and go one by one and rip out those roots. Trust me, that's exhausting. Ripping out every single root of all these vines and thorny bushes and all this other stuff. That's recovery. That's the genuine process that our addicts have to go through in order to be successful. That dry drunk shit, just cutting off the top layer, it's meaningless. Doesn't do anything. Sure, it's shiny for a moment, but all the problems are still there and they will all resurface. As you know, Alcoholics Anonymous, AA, the original, the OG treatment of addiction was established in 1935. Oh, you know what? That makes me think we should do an episode all about that. Okay, hold on. Let me make a note. Consider it noted. I paused you and I noted it. I'm also a note girl. I'm a sleepy girl and a note girl. As you know, those two probably go well hand in hand, because if I'm sleepy a lot, I gotta have my notes to remember. Okay. AA was established in 1935. The term dry drunk started kicking around. I don't exactly know how far it dates back, but I know for sure we start seeing it around the 1950s. Could have been earlier, but that's just what we're seeing here. The term was used to describe behaviors of a person. It was through observation. What they really noticed, which makes sense of how there's a bit of a time gap, 1935 and then the 1950s. There had to have been some time for them to notice and establish real set patterns of addiction and addicts. It was observed that even though some people stopped drinking, there was still a lot of turmoil and issues happening with these people. Maybe they were controlling or angry, blaming, entitled, miserable, resentful. They weren't drinking, but there was still suffering occurring for them. They started calling these people dry, in describing the fact that they were dry because they weren't drinking, but they were still miserable and suffering, and all those other problems still existed, just in a dry state. Why exactly does dry drunk happen? Remember, this term originally formulated for alcoholics, but we now use it to encompass all addicts. Well, we got to understand something about addiction here. It's not just about the substance. We think that as loved ones. The substance is such a small part of the addiction. An addict would use an addict who uses drugs, yes, they have a preferred drug, but they would use anything. They would switch up too. It's not about the substance itself. It's about what's underneath it, those roots. Maybe it's from trauma, childhood experiences, anxiety, depression. As you know, mental health disorders are very common with addicts, either occurring before the addiction or as a result of. Could be attachment wounds, emotional dysregulation, chronic stress, shame, low self-worth, social isolation. That is just a small example of what the roots of addiction could possibly be. And of course, you can talk about genetics, environmental factors. We see most addicts have a combination of things. Most of them, it'll be several different things as their roots. If we take away the substance, the other things are still there. The trauma is still there. The mental health disorder, the chronic stress, the low self-worth, all of that remains. That's why when I am in the recovery space and I see someone who's not putting in the effort, I know what's going to happen. It's not a surprise to me. And it's just like in my head, I contemplate, okay, what would be the time frame? Because they are going to relapse. They get off the substance, don't do any other work, and then they're thrust back into life. The overwhelm, the expectations, stress from work, stress from family, stress from a spouse, feeling like they don't belong, mental health disorders, all that starts flooding them. And they're going to be overwhelmed because the substance dulled all that. Now they're feeling it hardcore. They're going to relapse. Absolutely. 100% of the time. If there's no work done, they're going to relapse. And that's what we see here. The substances, the behaviors, that's what you see. That's what's visible for you. And that's why you associate addiction simply with the substance or the behavior, is because that's all your experience is of it. The deeper wounds, the issues, the roots, they can't be seen by you. And you also aren't experiencing the depth of those wounds. When we don't address it, it remains. Dry drunk versus sober. This is when it starts getting a little bit confusing, and we might have to leave a little space for interpretation. Sober, the way I think of it, is anyone can be sober. I'm not an addict, but I call myself sober because I don't use any substance. I haven't for many years. I don't use medication or alcohol or anything. So I term myself sober, not saying I have an addiction, saying that I don't partake. And when I think about the addiction recovery community, they often call themselves sober as well. And they're saying that term as an alternative to recovered. So they're kind of in their heads saying sober and recovered is the same thing, or in recovery. I'm sober, I'm in recovery. They associate that together. And the term dry drunk is because most people are using sober in the same context as recovered, I would say we could categorize dry drunk as just someone who's has an addiction who's not currently using, not doing any work, not changing anything else, but just simply not using. And you might have your own thoughts and terminology. Maybe for you, you connect sober more closely to a dry drunk because sober just means not using, correct? Yes. But I'll say in the recovery world, they use that term sober as a partner to saying recovered. So people might say, I'm sober, I'm recovered, as the same thing. When we love an addict, we kind of reach for anything and everything. Any milligram of hope, we expand it and make it as big as possible because that's all we got. We've got nothing else. And there are very few milligrams of hope when you love an addict. We can absolutely be grateful that our loved ones are dry drunk. Absolutely. We don't have to be using this in a derogatory way. We can be happy that they're abstaining from their substance or their behavior. And we can even recognize them for that. We need to expand that and understand that while we can appreciate they're not using, the problem still remains. And unless there's significant change on their side beyond the using, that will resurface. I don't want us having any kind of delusional thinking out here. Oh, my loved one stopped using. The problem is gone. It's over. I can relax. I can go back to my life. I don't want us in that state because you will be very heartbroken and disappointed once that addiction resurfaces, because it will resurface. There's no question about that. I just want you to make sure you're fully informed so that you can help to navigate that heartbrokenness very soon into the future. Our addicts might also try to manipulate us in our lack of understanding about addiction by saying they're not using, they're not partaking anymore, so they're fine. They're good. My sister Jenna did this. She came in detox with me for, I don't know. It was twice, so I can't remember if it was first or second time. First time was shorter, I believe. The second time was longer. And she would, when she was leaving, she was desperately leaving and saying things like, oh, I'm good. I haven't used for 3 weeks. I haven't used for 4 weeks. I'm fine. If you heard that as a loved one and didn't know anything about addiction, you would think, wow, she's gone a whole month. That bulk of the problem of removing the drugs from the system, all of that is gone. The withdrawal and the after effects of the withdrawal, they're good now. My problem is gone. And she's right. She hasn't used drugs for a month. She's fine now. And we might prefer that type of thinking because it's easier to address that than it would be to address the fact that the roots are still there and nothing is actually different. You just physically took yourself off the substance. But as soon as your head starts to get overwhelmed, you're going to immediately run back to the substance because you have no other skills. There's no other strategy. We haven't practiced any other behaviors. The first sign of discomfort, they will Kenyan sprint back to those substances and that lifestyle because it's the only way they know how to function. I don't want them to use your gap as their advantage, their leverage. Don't ever let them tell you just because they've gone 6 months that they're fine. If you verse yourself in addiction, there are stories of people who abstained for decades, changed nothing else about themselves or their lives, just stopped using for decades. And the whole time they were miserable and suffering, clenching their fist, trying to make it through, eventually relapsing. We would not call that recovered. We call that actually actively addicted. They're still actively addicted in their head, and you would use that term in this context, dry drunk. While yes, we can recognize our loved ones for their efforts to not use. That is very difficult, yes. But that's not the end of it. And we want to really celebrate achievements in the recovery space when they've actually done work and invested in themselves and made significant internal changes. What would be some warning signs of dry drunk behavior? It almost sounds derogatory. I kind of want to call someone, you dry drunk. Like, wouldn't that be a great slur in traffic? Like road raging? Oh my gosh. I'm so dark. I kind of want to get into a road rage incident where I can call someone a dry drunk. Okay, let me reel it in. Hold on. Let me mentally get out of there. And this is good information to know because, say, for example, your loved one is one of those people that I see in the rooms that goes in, sits there, is in la la land, just waiting for time to pass, doesn't make any changes, is exactly the same from day 1 to day 90. You might think, oh my God, they graduated from treatment. They're good. Everything's amazing. You might not understand the fact that they did no work in there and their roots are still there. They're alive. What are some warning signs for you? Chronic anger is one, because we cover that in rehab. We cover emotional regulation, processing anger, how to not be impulsive. All that is connected. We can look at someone if they're having chronic anger and they're not working on strategies and implementing specific techniques for that. That could be a warning sign that no work was done. Also, say your loved one didn't go to rehab, but just stopped using, because they'll probably trick you and say that, oh, I already stopped on my own. I don't need treatment. And you might be happy to go along with that. If that's the case as well, you might experience them having chronic anger because they not only didn't even hear about strategies for emotional regulation, but nothing changed for them. And that's one of the results of going off of the substance. Very intense emotional experience, a lot of turbulence, and there can be quite a lot of anger just naturally. They spent a very long time not feeling emotions, or when they did feel those emotions, immediately going to their substance and having some escapism. They're not accustomed to being inside an emotional experience. Of course, if you're not accustomed to that, it's jarring, and they tend to have this flood, this influx of emotions, and they're having to navigate not only an intense emotional experience, but how to be in that without using a substance. Another warning sign / red flag, because that's what everybody says today, red flag, is having a victim mentality. This is a very good indicator as to whether or not someone is doing inner work. You are not taking accountability for yourself if you're in a victim mindset. Those two things can exist together. And in treatment, we have to take accountability for ourselves. There's a lot of self-reflection, a lot of honesty about self. Anyone who remains in a victim mentality, whether dry drunk or in recovery treatment center, they're not doing the necessary internal reflection, or they just haven't gotten there yet, because it is a process. Say your loved one is a little new to treatment and still in a victim mentality, I wouldn't rush to the conclusion that they're not doing actual work there. I would lean more on the side of they haven't gotten there yet and they're in their process still. I would give them space with that. If they're viewing themselves as perpetually wronged, nothing is their responsibility, nothing is their doing, other people cause their problems, maybe any kind of consequences that they receive, they might view that as persecution or undeserving. Any kind of feedback might be an attack for them. Overall, they're going to view accountability as a sort of criticism. The next one is emotional immaturity. Oh no, it's raining. Just started raining. I was planning on going for a walk, y'all, after this episode. Boo. Okay. Summer in Florida, it just rains a lot. I am so disappointed. And I left it to the end of the day. It's the end of the day, and I was like, I'm going to take my walk. And now it's raining. Okay, anyways. Speaking of emotional immaturity, a lot of people have an opinion that whatever age someone began using substance is the age they kind of froze, especially emotionally. And we might find our addicts to be more immature than their age. And I'm sure if you reflect on your addict, you might see that within them. This kind of stunts their growth. If we started substance as a child, which most of them are using very early, and it's shocking, before their age even hits 2 digits, it's very shocking. They're starting so young, and we have to contemplate if they're dependent on substance very early, before they've developed, before they know who they are, they've had personality, all of that. Well, of course they have personality, but you know what I'm saying. Matured personality. They're becoming dependent on substance at that point. They're not learning anything. They're not developing. There's no personal growth. There's no advanced knowledge or strategy in their head. They're stagnant on addiction. That's my answer for everything. That's how I cope. That's how I get through life. That's how I have fun. Everything goes back to the addiction. We'll find this to be much more pronounced when someone is in the dry drunk state. Because anytime they're stressed, they're going to almost act like a child. If they're overwhelmed, whatever's happening around them, they will definitely act very immature. Maybe throwing a temper tantrum, sulking, withdrawing, blaming, being defensive, being impulsive. There's not any self-regulation. The next one, black and white thinking. Now, I think more than addicts are guilty at this. A lot of us are having black or white thinking under the context. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad. In this context, we say black and white thinking is bad. It's like all or nothing kind of a thought. Either you're with me or you're against me. Something is either good or bad, right or wrong. We know there's gray area. Addicts tend to use this type of thinking as an excuse. If they made a mistake, they'll catastrophize it and think, I'm a failure, I'm not good. If they have a thought, they'll catastrophize it. Say they were dry drunk and then they use their substance again. They might spiral and say, you know what, let me use hard. They're like, I'm going all out. Kind of how I think of it is, say we're on a diet and we have a cookie. We're kind of at this junction of, okay, I had a cookie. There's two options here. I could stop eating and just let it be one cookie, or I can say, fuck it, and stuff my face for the rest of the day. I had a cookie. I ruined my day. I ruined my calories. Let's go hard. And that's having that black or white thinking. In recovery, we address that and we talk about having nuance. We talk about not being perfect every moment or every day and allowing ourselves the space to not go to any extreme just because of one thing. That's not a justification. That's not a permission slip to go extreme. Any person who's done development work, who has invested in treatment, they're trained or advised to go away from this type of thinking. Now, are there going to be slips? Yeah, of course. But your addict should be more open than having extreme thinking. The next one, lack of accountability, could go in conjunction with that victim mentality, a little branch off of it. In treatment, particularly the 12 steps, part of the program is to take accountability for self, is having that reflection, but also looking at damage done to themselves and to other people. The goal is to reflect on that, be honest, have conversations around it, and then ask for forgiveness and move forward in repair. That's the objective in treatment. And that should always be the objective of someone in recovery, is taking accountability for what they've done or what they've said, how that impacted everyone, and discussing it, but moving forward healthily. When we lack accountability, there's not going to be that. They'll refuse responsibility. There's not asking for forgiveness because there's not even acknowledgement of it. Then another one you might notice, another red flag. This is common, so please lean into me, babes. Substitution. You see this a lot in addiction. And I wouldn't even say it's always with people who are dry drunk. We do see it with people who maybe halfway try to do a treatment program. They're trying to weasel a fraction of work out of it. What occurs is swapping one addiction for another. Say they were addicted to drugs, whatever drug. And now they're shopping excessively. They're eating excessively. They're working excessively. They're maybe being compulsive with sexual relationships or partners, obsessive with video games, gambling, exercise obsession. We're just swapping one for another. And I don't think that's discussed enough, especially not only with you, the loved one, but even in the addiction space. We should probably talk about that a little bit more because it is very common. And what can happen is they'll use this substitution. Say they used meth and now they're having sex with everybody, okay? That'll be our example. They're just promiscuous and they're with everybody all the time. Several people a day. They're just going crazy. That promiscuous behavior can taper them back into their preferred addiction of meth. That is like opening a door so that they can slowly and progressively move to their preferred addiction. And you might not even connect the two. Say it's shopping. How is shopping connected to meth? Okay, because maybe we can see promiscuity, right? You're getting high, you're having sex. Okay, I can kind of see that connection. Let's use shopping then. You're shopping and it's crazy and it's obsessive and it's all the time. How does that connect to the meth? It's the obsessive behavior. It's the escapism behavior. It's the swapping one for another. That's never going to solve their problems, but you as a loved one might be sitting there like, well, shopping is better than meth. At least they won't die. We can pay back debts. Okay, and I get that. But we don't ever want to diminish a substitute behavior because that is their gateway. Talk about gateway drugs. That's their gateway behavior back to the meth. And I've told this story on the podcast before. I knew a guy in treatment. He got through the program, was doing good, and he got a job. Now, I don't like the job that he had was not good. There were a lot of questionable activities, people with not good morals, like no morals. There was a lot of stuff happening and I didn't like where he was. He was a drug user and what he started doing was gambling. He would buy scratch tickets and lottery tickets, go to the casino, and it was not very long, maybe a month, before he woke up in a motel with a girl and drugs all around him. We don't want to diminish any kind of substitute because I want us to remember it's a gateway back. It's still someone who doesn't know how to process their life or their feelings or how to exist in the present moment. It's still someone who's chasing escapism. They're just thinking, oh, well, let me swap one for another. They're still not wanting to address the issues. Then the last warning sign I have is isolation. This is a huge one. A huge red flag, isolation. And this could also be a warning sign if your addict has genuinely done the work and is starting to slip and get off track. Them being in isolation is also going to be a warning sign there. The biggest indicator that your addict is genuinely in recovery and really putting in the effort is that they're still connected to their community and their network. They're going to events, not just meetings, because anyone can sit in a chair and drone out. I can be in my head about a meeting and not absorb anything, but participating in sober events, having sober friends, calling sponsors, being a sponsor, really engaged, which coincidentally is a huge trigger for you, the loved one of an addict. That can be very triggering because your addict is going to appear to have another life without you, a life where you're not invited. You can check out our episode all about that. What do we have? I know we talked about that in the episode on sabotage from family. And I wonder if we talked about that in another episode. Let me think. No, it would have just been that one. So check out that one. But it's triggering for us because it might lead us to feel like we're being left behind or abandoned. But it's non-negotiable. They have to be heavily connected with their network. I say that's a maintenance thing where it's going to be a forever thing. At the very least, the first 2 years, year and a half to 2 years, they're going to be heavy over there, where all their energy is over there. That's a big sign that they're doing the genuine work and staying connected. That's a good sign. For you, you're triggered by it, but it's actually a green flag. So when they're doing the opposite, the isolation stuff, that's a red flag. Red flag, they're slipping. Red flag, something's going on. They're not discussing it with you. A red flag that they've done no actual work and just are, like what we're talking about, a dry drunk. That state is going to perpetuate the isolation, because remember all the root things that we talked about at the beginning? All that's there, and it's going to lead them to despair. And with them being dry, they have to sit in the despair, and they're not connected. They don't have a network. They're not being social. That leads them to the isolation. They're going to withdraw, refuse help, avoid therapy, avoid having a conversation about stuff. Big, huge red flag. The implications of dry drunk on you, the loved one. We can be in denial, and we prefer a state of Delulu land, don't we? If only they stop drinking, everything will get better. Once they get into rehab, everything is over. Things will go back to normal. They're sober. Remember, we're going to use sober as the same as dry drunk. So we can finally be happy. We can finally relax. We can have life the way it was before. You're in Delulu land, and I've got my hand over there ripping you out of it, because we're not going to sit in that land. There's nothing over there for you. There's heartbreak and pain and disappointment, frustration, resentment. It's all is fucking in there. That's why I'm ripping you out. You think it's pleasure land. It ain't. It's land of pain. And we're going to get you out of there. We're calling in the troops. We're getting back up. Dragging your ass out of that land. Hanging on to some kind of thread of hope is what a lot of us use as a strategy to survive our loved one's addiction. It's not a logical search strategy. It's not actually going to get you any kind of results or relief. It's you lying to your dang self. And in that space, oh, they're dry drunk. They're not using. My problems are gone. It's over. They haven't used for a month, and they didn't even need treatment. Amazing. We're a success. We're one of the very lucky small percent. It ain't like that, and you're lying to yourself. And I'm not going to stand by and allow you to lie to yourself. As soon as those red flags start popping up, as soon as they perhaps switch one addiction to the next, becomes a gateway, and they go back into their preferred behavior or substance, you're going to be confused. You're going to be grief-stricken, heartbroken, disappointed. All the things I told you occur in Delulu land. That's what you're going to feel. Maybe even blindsided, because if you let your guard down thinking, it's over, we made it. A month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months later, they're back raging addiction. Well, that's not what you expected, now was it? You dropped your guard. And look what happened. Got disappointed again. Heartbroken again. Right back to the start. Again. Having these sentiments is normal. I get the desire to be in Delulu land. I get it. It's nice over there. It's whatever you want it to be over there. Yet, once their addiction resurfaces, you're going to have a very intense emotional experience, and you're probably going to blame yourself for a big portion of that. I should have seen the red flags. I should have known. I never should have been helpful. You're going to get real down on yourself. And I also am not going to stand by and allow you to blame yourself and be an inner critic to yourself. Because we have this episode, and now you know it's not just about stopping. It's so much more than that. And they have to put in the work for the genuine changes that you desire to occur. And they're not going to put in the work unless they genuinely desire the change and they invest in themselves. Let's look at some of the things you can do. The loved one of an addict. What can you do in this situation? If we do suspect our loved ones are dry drunk, don't be like me and use it in a road rage event. Don't be derogatory. Okay. If you want to use it derogatory, then do it with a stranger. Don't do it with your loved one. Call somebody on the street a dry drunk. Don't use this term as a bullet to project at your loved one. We're not just saying, like, you're a dry drunk. You aren't out here trying to analyze them, or what is that word that I'm trying to think of? Oh, that's right. Diagnose. You're not diagnosing them. You aren't shooting this at them. This is for your digestion. Some things that we can do in this scenario that we believe our loved one is dry drunk. The first one is going to be learning the difference between support and rescue. Imperative when you love an addict. You've got to learn the difference between these two. There is so much turmoil and damage done via rescuing. Like, my life mission is going to be to get all us loved ones to stop fucking rescuing. I'm going to have to tattoo that on myself. Stop the rescue. We're not on a rescue mission. We believe we are. It feels as though we are. And because we're having that emotional experience, it becomes our reality. That becomes our perception of the world. We are on a rescue mission. No soldier left behind. That's where we go wrong real fast. And we're going to learn the difference between support and rescue. I'm trying to think, do we have an episode on that? I just paused you and I made a note. If we don't, I will make one. Okay? If we don't have one, we'll make one. Support comes when we are able to face reality. We ourselves cannot be in denial. We ourselves cannot be in fucking Delulu land and be supportive. Don't work that way. Rescuing is really just protecting our addicts, protecting their addiction, helping the addiction sustain and expand. The next one is a word you thought I wasn't even going to say today because we're already at 55 minutes. And you're like, yeah, we got through an episode without it. But you didn't. I'm on to you. I'm vibing with you right now. I'm clocking your internal thought. That's the B word, baby. Boundaries. Yes. It wouldn't be a moment with me if we didn't talk about the B word. Boundaries are your biggest asset when you love an addict. And I will also continue to proclaim that. And that's also one of my life missions, is to get you down with the B word. They're not punishment. Boundaries are clarity. They're protection. They're clear and precise lines. They help preserve your well-being. They do not impact the actions of others. Other people are going to do what they do. What they say is what you're going to do. If your boundary is, we're not going to argue, or not argue, but let's say we're not going to yell. That's what I wanted to say. We're not going to yell here. And I start yelling at you. What are you going to do? Tell me to stop yelling? No. That's not about a boundary. You're trying to dictate me now. And you know you can't dictate me. What you're going to do is what you said you're going to do. You're going to walk away. The conversation is over until I regain control over myself and I conduct myself in a calm manner. And if I can't do that, the conversation never resumes. It's not about controlling the other person. It's about you managing yourself. And I don't accept that. Act however you want. Speak in whatever volume you want. I won't be here for it. Huge asset when we love an addict, because we get trampled by them, don't we? We get pummeled by abusive behavior from addicts. And when you start implementing your boundaries, it safeguards you from that abuse. The next one is focusing on the observable behavior. We're not going to be fixating on intentions or hopes and dreams. You're not going along with my fantasy. You're not recovering on my timeline. We want to focus on actions. We get our feelings hurt, and because of that, we're in our feelings a lot. Do you even like me? Do you even love me? Do you even care? That kind of thing. You're allowed to have emotions. There's nothing wrong with any of that. But that's not what we want to converse with our addicts about, particularly when they're dry drunk. That's not going to convince them of anything. And we hold that as leverage over our addicts quite a lot. And if loving you or being your spouse or parent or sibling, if that was actually a convincing factor, it would have worked right away from the beginning. Your addict would have never even become an addict because they would have reflected, oh, I can't do this. I have children. Oh, I can't do this. I have a spouse. Oh, I have family. I have a sibling. I can't do this. What about my parents? It's not ever been a factor and won't ever be one. Instead, we're going to be talking about the tangible things. You promised to call, but you didn't. You said you'd go ahead and do this, but you didn't. Observable, tactile, tangible, handable. that a word? Handable? I don't know. Behavior. Because it's hard for people to dispute behavior. They can dispute the, oh, don't you care? And they're going to say, you know I care. What is that? Okay. That's an argument. But you said you'd call and you didn't. You can't dispute that. I mean, they might try. Well, I did call. Didn't ring. Your phone is off. That's more of a tangible thing that you can have conversations about. That's also going to be your evidence. That's what you're observing is, okay, are they dry drunk? Let me look at the behavior. Let me look at, is there accountability? Are they isolating? We want to observe that behavior, not fixate on, oh, I'm getting a feeling, I've got a vibe that they're not doing good. No. We're looking at tangible. Which leads us into the next one. We are going to stop micromanaging them. Whether they're in recovery, active addiction, or say they're dry drunk. We're not managing them. Let's face it, you can't hardly manage yourself. You're not managing another person. I don't know what kind of a person you were growing up, but me, you couldn't manage me very early. Like, I don't know how early it was, teen or preteen, you could not tell me anything. And we're out here acting like we can control somebody. We can't even control children. I think they're screaming on airplanes, throwing stuff at grocery stores. They're flailing. Can't even control a child. You're not controlling an addict. Nor are you going to be able to control their choices, whether they're in recovery, active addiction, or dry drunk. And we have this tendency to be hypervigilant for selfish reasons. It's not to protect our addicts. I know you tell yourself it is, but it's not the reason you're hypervigilant. You're hypervigilant for self-protection. The sooner you acknowledge that and bring awareness to that, the sooner we can shift from it. You do that for you. It's so that you feel better. Your discomfort is eased. You can sleep in the night. You aren't worrying. It's got nothing to do with your addict. It's all for you. And we're going to stop projecting our needs onto other people. That hypervigilance, monitoring them, tracking them, investigating, checking up on them. Maybe they said they're going to go to a meeting, so you do a little drive-by. You know those old school drive-bys to see if somebody was at work or where they said they were going to be. You're going to do an old school drive-by just to check if their car is there. Maybe you're going to peek in the door to see if you can see them, if they're in there. Because they could have parked their car and then left, right? We start going crazy. I mean, is that stalker territory? I feel like it is. It's exhausting. I get it. It's understandable. Maybe we could say warranted sometimes. It's exhausting, and you're not going to be able to sustain that. It's also, let's remind ourselves, it's not your job to manage them. It's also not your job to dictate what their recovery is or isn't, whether they should or shouldn't be dry drunk, whatever. Your job, that's you. Your well-being, your peace of mind, your regulation. We're directly linked to our loved ones, and so their choices, their lifestyle directly impacts us. But you are responsible for you. And we tend to offset that and prefer to fixate on our loved ones because that's a little bit easier than fixating on what we need for ourselves. I'm just telling you how it is. The next one, seek your own support. They're over here with networks and at meetings. Even if they're dry drunk, they could still be going to meetings. They've got places to be. Where is your spot? You want to curate your spots for your support. Because you're going to be anxious. You're going to maybe be unhealthy with some codependency, experiencing chronic stress, people pleasing. You're definitely being hypervigilant. You need support. Then there's all kinds of support. Could just be one friend. You only need one. One friend that you connect with regularly. A therapist. Great. Therapists are great. You could find your own support group. You can find your own network, your own people. You have to have your healing process as well. Our side of addiction. We got work to do on this side. Yeah, if you want to join our community, we've got a community specifically for the loved ones of addicts. I'll drop a link in the show notes. I hope I remember. I'm not the best at that, and y'all know. Kinley Society. You can come over there and check us out. But you need to find your spot where you feel safe and connected and validated, where you can share your experiences and you can work on your side. I want to mention, I don't really want to mention this, but I feel like I should because I know where your head's going to go with this immediately. There is a small within a small percent of people who have cut cold turkey and not returned to their addiction and not really done much of a program as far as treatment goes. What I know about those people is that they do participate in some kind of social setting that's sober. Whether that's those sober events or maybe connecting with other types of people in recovery or sober people. They have some kind of network of their own. And they do independent personal development work. So they are working on themselves, but they're doing it independently. The reason I don't want to tell you that is because you're immediately going to think, that's what percentage I'm in. That's what percentage my loved one is in. They can do cold turkey. They cut cigarettes cold turkey. That's where I'm going to be. I don't have to worry about this dry drunk thing and roots and relapse and all this bullshit Amanda's saying. Not me, not us. You're fucking in Delulu land. Okay? Delulu land. And I'm coming to rip your ass back out. Because there ain't no way you're part of that percentage. It is very rare. I've maybe met 3 people who have done that. Extremely rare circumstance. Extremely. And smoking a cigarette is not the same thing as smoking meth or shooting heroin. Let's be realistic here. There was a point in my life where I smoked cigarettes and I cut it out cold turkey. It's not that bad. It was like 2 weeks of fighting urges and then I was done. There was no psychological turmoil that I was dealing with. There weren't any roots. We're not going to be comparing something small like, oh, they stop drinking coffee so they could stop being an alcoholic. No, I want to mention that just for the sake of mentioning that that is a possibility, and it could happen that your loved one gets dry drunk and then does some recovery work on their own. That is possible. But here, you see what I said? Then they do recovery work on their own. There has to be work attached to it. Some things we might look for, some of the green flags in that context. Maybe more patience, more empathy, an increase in honesty and conversations around tough stuff, emotional growth, more accountability, very consistent. They do what they say they're going to do. They have a higher level of humility. They seek help, whether that's professional help or help from friends or help in just, I need to get this off my chest. They're actively engaging in those resources. They accept consequences. They're repairing relationships. There's a willingness to listen. Those are some things we could look for, and especially look for those things if your addict is in a recovery treatment program. That's how you can gauge if they're genuinely putting in the work. If your addict has gone dry drunk and you're seeing those signs, that's positive. Not positive like jump back into Delulu land. No. Positive as in that's the direction we want to keep going in. To be fair, no one is perfect, not even you. I know, you're looking good in the mirror this morning, but not even you are perfect. Our addicts are not going to be perfect in this, and we should never, ever expect our addicts to be perfect. And that includes any kind of process they're going through. If they're in the recovery treatment process, if they're just dry drunk right now and trying to figure out their world, if they're dry drunk moving into recovery, whatever it is. I don't want you to see a couple red flags or have a couple bad days or weeks and just immediately think, oh my God, it's not working. This is a disaster. Expect the imperfection. Expect the fact that this is a process and we're just looking for progress, not ever perfection. We're looking for them to become a little bit more accountable, a little bit more humble, a little bit more communicative, just a little more. Recovery is not being measured by an absence of substance or behavior. That's not an indication of whether or not something is occurring or gone away. Instead, we measure recovery by growth. That progress in the process. Being dry drunk is not the same as healing. It's also not the same as being in progress. It can be confusing when you love an addict if they're dry drunk, but all those old behaviors are there. All those old patterns still exist. Perhaps things have gotten a little worse. Maybe you've shifted from the problem being the addiction to the problem being now turbulence, volatility, isolation. Things aren't actually getting any better. That can be confusing when we're thinking that our problems go away if the substance or behavior is no longer here. It's about the mindset. if the mind is actively addicted or not. Not about the physical presence of a substance or behavior. You know, recovery is far grander than abstinence. It's not about, I stopped drinking. It's about becoming a different version of a person who no longer needs to drink. They no longer need the escapism. As the loved one of an addict, you can stop blaming yourself, stop residing in the Lulu land, and focus on having more realistic expectations. Those expectations will bring... Oops. Gotcha. I always get ya. Cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. Cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. That's our episode on the term dry drunk. Go ahead and shout it out at some loser who doesn't know how to use a fucking traffic circle in your road rage. But don't direct that at your addict. Use that for yourself so that you have a greater understanding of addiction, of the terms that are used in the addiction world, so that you can understand the difference for yourself, but also to define that difference with your addict. Remember, we're not using this as ammunition against them. We're using this as leverage so that we can become greater assets in this battlefield of loving an addict. We drop new episodes every single Thursday morning. Check the notes. I'll drop links in there. But until the next episode, y'all, Meg Fondis.